Hello. In this video I want to address a little bit of the difference that notation can make. Okay, so we're going to look at the difference between these things here. Now, before I do that, I just want to cover a couple little concepts so that when we're actually talking about specifically about these, it'll be a little easier. So first, when we talk about trig functions, always, the input to a trig function is an angle. All right, so if I say sine of x, even though normally most people think of x as horizontal motion for an xy or Cartesian plane, because this is the input to a trig function, I automatically know it's an angle. I don't care if I said sine of tulapa. I made that up. Tulapa is an angle. How do I know? It's the input to a trig function. That's all I need to know, that I know it's an angle. And out comes a ratio, right? Once I take the sine of that angle or whatever trig function of that angle, remember those are really defined as the ratio of two sides of a right triangle. So it's just, and then because it is a ratio, it's a ratio of two numbers, and regardless of how they were measured, what units, those units cancel out. So you're just left with a number. So now with inverses, things are switched, right? So in comes a number and out comes an angle, all right? And then I also just wanted to remind you about how exponents sometimes work. Here, this is a common mistake people make. Sometimes they'll just say, oh, well, that's positive 9. It's not. Remember, this square applies only to what's directly beneath it, and that's just the 3. So only the 3 is being squared. So I have 3 times 3, and then I have this negative sign out there, which is understood to be a negative 1. So this is actually negative 9. Whereas if I wanted to square the entire number, I would have to put parentheses around it. Now, what's directly beneath the exponent is a parentheses, so that is what gets squared, is everything inside the parentheses. All right? So now let's go back to this. In here, what I have is the inverse, well, this negative little exponent, what looks like a negative 1 exponent, is being applied to the function. It's part of the name of the function. So in that case, it is understood to be the inverse sign because of its location. Okay. Whereas here, this exponent, negative 1, it applies to just what's underneath it, which is this right here. So this is understood to be sine of 1 over x. Okay. Whereas over here, this negative 1 exponent applies to the entire function. So this is 1 over sine of x. Okay. All right. Thanks so much for listening.